Welcome, everyone. Welcome to AfriH. AfriH, as you all know, is an acronym for Africans for the Restoration of Ethics in Government. We are a nonpartisan organization that harnesses the expertise of professional Africans and global partners around the world to discuss issues significant to the continent of Africa and her well-being, more importantly, her future. And tonight we are honored with, I call him my African brother. He's my African brother, right? He was just born here in America, but he's an African, amen.
Amen.
He's a pastor in the Chicagoland area. His name is Pastor Gregory Morris. And just a little bit about him before we start this segment with him, our interview. He has over 30 years as an information technology professional in various corporate and higher educational sectors here in the United States of America. He currently functions as an information technology federal contractor for the United States Department of Energy. Pastor Greg is married to his wife Donna for over 35 years, let me get that right. And he has 2 children, a daughter and a son. As I said earlier, he also pastors a church in the Chicagoland area. Pastor Greg, welcome to AfriH.
Amen. Great to be here. Great to be a part. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yes. You know, we're going to be, you know, we entitled this segment, Technology in the Future of Africa. You know, we've had a lot of speakers here and we have discussed a lot of things concerning, you know, Africa and just, you know, what our perception of the continent is right now and how we can improve, you know, by bringing recommendations, you know, that policymakers can glean from, you know, and make decisions how to help Africa in the future. Tonight, as I said, the segment is technology, looking at technology, because obviously that's your area of expertise, a lot of years in this area. And so we're just going to dive in, you know, into our interview time with you tonight. Pastor Greg, you know, talk to us. What is technology? You know, let's just start on the basics. You know, what is technology? And, you know, it's interesting because for the past years, at least for me growing up, you know, I knew there was this thing called technology, you know, but we see all of a sudden that it has just become an intricate part of everything we do in our world today, you know. So let's start foundation, a little foundation. You know, what is technology? And why all of a sudden, you know, our world just revolves around technology?
Sure. Well, just a very basic definition, a book definition, if you will, of technology is basically the application of scientific knowledge as it relates to just practical everyday life. So it could be various fields of areas of technology, but the gist of it is to apply it for our lives, really to automate things that we do on a daily basis. So that's kind of a book, if you will, definition, but I'd like to put it this way, that technology is no longer a luxury. It used to be a luxury, but now it's an absolute necessity, because everything that our lives touch, or everything that we do, revolves around or is intertwined with technology. We can't get away from it, you know, and I think our discussion and conversation will bear that out.
You know, with your area of expertise, you know, information technology, you know, because I mean, when we talk about technology, at least from my layman perspective, you know, you talk in general terms, you know, but try to narrow it down to what you do personally, because your area is information technology. Talk to us a little bit about this area.
Sure. Well, you know, over the my career, I've seen, for example, there was a time where what we know as personal computers, or PCs, if you will, there was a time that there weren't any. I mean, there were always, there existed what's called mainframes, or large, the government and different areas and technology fields For example, the mainframe was a huge computer that would fill, let's say, a given room, an entire room, right? So computers have always, especially since around the 1930s or so, the government, as we know it today, and it's evolved and morphed into it. But what we're looking at today and what we're really discussing, I think, and what you're asking is in the information technology, where it has transitioned from something that was available only for, let's say, the government or for those that were well off, but now is available to the masses. And so just over in my lifetime, just my career, as I mentioned, that, for me at school, there was no such thing as jumping on a computer and typing up a paper. It was a typewriter, right?
Yep, that's right. That's
and
right.
so just in a short span of time, we've gone from, large mainframes to PCs to that mainframe device that I was talking about that could fill up an entire room. Now in the palm of our hands, we have a cell phone that is much more powerful, as powerful as the mainframes could ever be, much more, that could do more. And again, right in the palm of our hands, the world has kind of dwindled, if you will, due to the technology, whether it's tablets, cell phones, laptops, or whatever the case is. So, again, I will mention it, probably touch on it several times, that whereas before it was just a sheer luxury, information technology or PCs or all, but now you can't get away from it, and it's an absolute necessity. And I think that's quite evident.
Can you talk to us a bit about the benefits of technology for nations now?
Sure.
We know the individual level, but now we're going to go on a national level, or on a federal level, so to speak. But let's talk about the benefits of technology for nations that embrace this whole tech revolution, and develop the capabilities and the systems, within their daily functions, and operations. How beneficial is technology to those nations as a whole?
Right. Well, I remember talking to someone years ago, and they framed it this way, that technology, they said that technology decides history, and I didn't really catch that or embrace or grab a hold of that when it was said. But now I understand, but I'll take that even a step further, that not only does technology shape history, whether it's a personal destiny or that of a country, but it will also shape and frame the trajectory, of a person's destiny, as well as a country's destiny, history, the direction, and the legacy left. And so the trickle down effect of technology, information technology, is huge. So as far as, for example, any country, especially what we refer to as perhaps developing countries, there are many, many benefits to it. I mean, probably the most obvious, in my estimation, is that it's a huge boost to a nation's economy. The more cutting edge or embracing technology that country or individual, if you will, stays relevant as far as the marketplace is concerned. As far as the country is concerned, technology can, let's say, reduce the cost of production, okay, and automating things that, for example, what we call or know as AI, or artificial intelligence. A lot of, or in other words, robots and all of that type of thing. So there may be a cost reduction or perhaps a price reduction, as it relates to that. Also, too, technology will encourage, or should anyway, the growth of new business and advance, for example, the communication to facilitate additional and subsequent growth. And as I said a second ago, that probably just if you sum it all up, a nation's technological backbone, okay, keeps that country relevant in the global marketplace. There's no doubt about that. And the more that a country, the government, and everything that goes, along with, the facilitating a healthy country, the quicker that that's embraced. Again, the issue of staying relevant is huge. It's an absolute must.
That's amazing. That's amazing. We want to now narrow our conversation to Africa. Just listen to what you just said. I can just help but think.
Mhm.
One of the benefits, with technology, right in our airports. Obviously, you also travel to Africa. You did mission trip to Africa, and so you're familiar with how things you observe firsthand. But I know for me, one of the beautiful things I see in the Western world, and also, as opposed to Africa, when it comes to technologies, is off the bat, right in the airports here, in the Western world. I mean, you have these kiosks that you just go and hit, just press buttons and you print out your ticket. You don't have to stay in line to go to the ticket agent to go through all. You can just hit that. I mean, and just go straight, to check in. Whereas, we struggle with some of those things back home because you got to go in this long line, you got to wait your turn, and things like that. So just off the bat, just one areas I see that technology really helps, as you mentioned, to help, things go faster, move on, because you don't have time to waste. But when we talk about Africa again, compared to other continents, Pastor Greg, Africa is lagging behind in terms of the whole tech revolution. Now we do have individual Africans that are tech savvy, that get all these degrees in technology and doing some great things. But I'm talking on a continental level, holistically, compared to the West and other places. Africa is struggling in this era, or lagging behind this era. What are some of the risks or challenges? Again, you have experienced it because you have traveled to Africa as well. But what are some of the challenges you see that we face by lagging behind technologically? And what are we missing? What are we missing by staying in the old way of doing things? You know what I mean? How is this hurting us?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to, what I stated just a second ago. I mean, the embracing technology, and it's multifaceted, again, will maintain and enhance a country's relevance globally, okay, on so many different levels. I think not only with a country or continent such as Africa, and this could be in any setting or environment or context. One of the most dangerous phrases is, "We've always done it that way."
Yeah.
And I always think about that IBM, International Business Machine, one of the cutting edge leading technology companies, back when technology just took off. Back in the early 40s, and even now, IBM is still one of the leading technology companies. But the thing that just intrigues me is that the president of IBM back in 1943 said that, again, and I quote, okay, his name is Thomas Watson. He says, "I think that there is a world market for maybe 5 computers." Wow. That's what the president of IBM said. And so even all these many years later, okay, that mindset to some degree is still pervasive. And that is especially so, here in the US and in Africa, and all because of not wanting to engage or to embrace something that's new, something that's going to stretch and if you will, pull us out of our comfort zone. So I think one of the greatest um, travesties, if you will, is not wanting to be a visionary, if you will. And that's going to take someone that perhaps does not have a technology background, but if I am a CEO or president or CIO or what have you, I'm going to surround myself with those that are knowledgeable in the technology field, because every day that we don't move forward is another, tick off the clock of moving backwards. And again, losing our relevance because it's so competitive globally anyway. And Africa as a continent and all the various countries, the resources, just as the natural resources are varied and many, so it is, the greatest resource are the minds of, whether it's the younger people coming up or even someone such as myself. I've been in technology for a while, and it's something that it begs us, if you will, and prompts us to stay relevant. So as far as Africa is concerned, that is not a blanket statement. There's a lot of advancement and a lot of cutting edge, leading edge technology there. But again, I think the greatest hurdle is the mindset. We've always done it this way, or out of sight, out of mind. It's like insurance. Okay, I'm not going to think about it until I need it. Well, technology in, let's say, an infrastructure, a network, be it for the government or hospital or law firm or whatever the case may be, is that, if I'm in my office on my computer, I don't really think about, technology per se. I'm on the computer, but until it goes down and I don't have access to it, now it's, critical, it's urgent. And we realize at that point just how much a part of our lives, technology is. So I think, and I think, we'll probably touch on it in a bit, but boy, it is more than ever urgent, the urgency to start young and to retrain our minds and our thinking regarding that. And even, and it's cross-generational. It's just not, the youth or young people, but it's also those that are the decision makers, those in, government that are perhaps not as, embracing it, but there needs to be that paradigm shift, if you will, regarding that, and therein lies to trickle down for a particular country, the economy. It goes on.
Wow. And I'm glad you kind of alluded to you talk about the the commitment to learn, the commitment to get to be knowledgeable in this area. That brings me to our next question. How can we develop this sector in our national infrastructure? Pretty much where does it begin? Where does it begin? Because this, as you mentioned, and we do know, this is essential to the 21st century going forward.
Absolutely.
You literally see there's no going back. Technology, this is it. This is a new world. This is the new era we are in, and going to get better and better and more complex, and you don't want to be left way behind. So where does it begin? How nations that are not walking in this era can start. Where does it begin?
Yeah. Well, I'll use this example that the residual effect of the pandemic, for example, exposed the woeful inadequacy of many, many companies, both in the private sector, the federal government, you name it. And because I'll use, for example, the Office of Science, the Department of Energy is multi-layered. And the layer that I'm directly involved with is the Office of Science, where the Department of Energy works hand in hand with universities and contracts and all that type of thing. So what we found out was that third week in March of 2020, when the Department of Energy here went into full what they call telework mode, it was just glaringly obvious that we weren't prepared, you know. And so on basically on this, I mean, we had to in the just work out in so many ways, work out things that as we were going along, you know, as far as rolling out technology that would allow those, you know, the employees to remote in or to gain access to the resources that they needed, you know, here at the Argonne National Lab in order to function and work. And so so my point being is that, you know, it was just not, you know, Department of Energy, but, you know, companies across the board that were exposed, you know, and because there was not that preparedness, that readiness, the being a visionary and looking ahead, because, you know, let's face it, a visionary is not someone that just can see down the street. You know, anybody can see what's right in front of us, but a visionary is someone that can see around the corner, over the hill, under, long before the rest of the, you know, population, you know, they're gauging the temperature. So as far as, you know, developing in the sector, you know, as far as a national infrastructure, again, I go back to, you know, those that are decision makers, okay, in be it tech companies, the federal government, having a greater, what's the word I'm looking for? Just more exposure in the various tech fields, and placing greater emphasis on that, because as you mentioned, you know, a little bit ago, there is no rewinding the clock. There is no going back. And you know, what I'm not saying is that everyone has to be a techie guru, and just, you know, where it's oozing out of their ears. But what I am saying is that we have no other option but to really be able to have a good handle on it. Again, as far as the workplace and education or whatever, again, I'll have to reiterate, you know, unless we do that, we become, you know, irrelevant and we don't stay relevant. And when the techie field, it's not a matter of, you know, 5 years or a decade, you know, a year, just one calendar year, things change and evolve. And so you've got to, you know, stay moving and all. And so that mindset from a national, you know, infrastructure. So, you know, you're looking at policy, you know, is, you know, how important is that? You know, if it's not important, you know, with education and really immersed with our schools at a very elementary level, if it's not important, if it's not a priority, then it needs to be. And so then you work your way up. And by the time you know, a young person graduates from, I don't know, whether it's high school or an undergrad degree, I mean, they're savvy, tech savvy, you know, and so those are the ones entering into the marketplace. And so that's where you have to start. But it takes visionaries in order to do that.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. I spoke a few months ago with a gentleman from one of the actually he was from India,
Mhm.
and he and I was talking briefly, and he was in the tech, the tech world, and he was telling me, because I asked him, I say, I mean, I come to find out that many of you, Asians, you guys, have a lot of expertise in this area as well. And he said, where he went to school in India, it was almost like it was something they had to learn in the
Mhm.
school. It had been integrated in the school
Yep.
system.
Yep.
That by the time he graduated from high school, he knew programming. He knew so many things, the foundations of a computer and how to. And he just built on that. He just built on that. Um, and you kind of alluded to it, just I'm just talking about, which brings me to my next question, about, what do you think about integrating technology, computer tech programming, those kind of things in the educational system,
Mhm.
in Africa? I mean, how soon do you think, our students, because if we want to build this thing, how soon do you think students, should start being exposed to technology in schools?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I personally, obviously within reason and there are boundaries and parameters, but I personally think you can never start too early because let's face it, by the time a child reaches, I don't know, let's say kindergarten, for example, okay, they've already been exposed to a myriad of
Yeah.
technology, I mean, it's endless. You can give. I know I would back in the day. We're talking flip phones and all of that. I would give my kids who were really little the phone, and they would have figured it out. I mean, and that's true of any. Whether they're the millennials or Gen, whatever they happen to be, that's all they know.
Yeah.
Technology is all
That's
they
true.
know.
It's true.
Whereas in my day, again, if I'm trying to describe to my kids what a typewriter is and why it was even needed, that's completely foreign to them,
It's true. It's true.
and so they, kids in the generation, even the smaller kids, they're raised and I mean, to technology is all around them.
Yeah.
They can't get away from it. And so by the time you enter school, a formal education setting, whatever that may be, basically, the curriculum and the classroom, whatever that the teacher has, is just reinforcing what's already there. Because, for example, most elementary schools, the kids starting from kindergarten to eighth grade or junior high or whatever, they're being issued like tablets or Chromebooks or a smaller version of laptops. So it's something that to answer your question, I don't think it's never too soon, never too early. It is, I think, very important in monitoring, where the kid is just not overdosing, if you will, just on technology. There has to be a balance, but I don't think
Yes.
you can ever start too early.
Well, when it comes to and again, to our audience, we are, this is AfriH, and even as we are going on now, many of you may have questions for Pastor Greg. You can just put in the chat and we'll relay those questions to him. But I want to talk a little bit on policy because
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the role policymakers play, they pretty much they are the decision makers, how things run, within a nation. Um, what advice will you give to policymakers, or leaders in of governments in places like in Africa, so to speak, regarding the development of this area for the future of Africa? And the reason I say this is because We can, I mean, we all know that tech, this is not a cheap field, you know. In
Yeah,
other words, it's, you know, we talk about building systems. I mean, this
mhm,
is, and the tech systems and the relevance of it makes it expensive. And sometimes I think policymakers in Africa has so much to weigh, you know, to prioritize, so to speak, because you know, you think about, you know, and we had a segment a few weeks ago, you know, concerning, you know, healthcare, you know what I mean? Then we talk about education, then we talk, finance, you know, so there's so many areas, you know, and then now we try to introduce them, you know, to educate them with the importance of technology, which is a whole different infrastructure setup, you know, that is expensive, you know. And so sometimes I think sometimes, you know, just looking at these things, you know, there's a struggle in terms of priority, you know, prioritizing. But we see that this era is in demand. You need it. You need it. In fact, all these other sectors we're talking about need what you know, the IT sector to be more efficient, you know, so that they can function. So what advice would you give to people that make decisions, policymakers, concerning this era, and what they have to prioritize, you know, in terms of infrastructure development in Africa?
sure, sure. Well, there's at least four things that always come to mind, and it's certainly not limited to these four, but it includes these in my estimation. That policymakers, within the government or the education, field, higher ed or whatever, there has to be a priority in promoting what I like to call sustainable commercial environment, where, let's say, a private sector, for example, can flourish. Okay, how can we do that? Well, as far as policymakers are concerned, securing investment, or giving incentives or whatever the case may be for companies, that as far as being able to develop technology infrastructure, making it a priority where that is in the technology infrastructure deployments and all of that. It has to be. It may not be the main thing, if you will, but it's certainly in the conversation as the top two or three concerns. And so, for the policymakers, okay, how can we promote, a commercial environment, where that can flourish, technology can build and enhance. Number two, governments have to ensure, stability and what I call predictability of a given policy environment, okay, as it relates to, be it the political landscape or financial volatility. How are we approaching that? How is a government or entity approaching that particular, as far as the policy is concerned? Then you have, things such as, regulatory best practice, is absolutely vital. Again, we're talking in the context of policy and best practices and all of that, whether it's in the private sector or just in the government, in what across the board. So again, establishing best practices, and where the government can place put those in place, adopt them where possible, where necessary, and make it very I guess beneficial, if you will, for companies to really enhance, to develop, and where there is a want to, or the motivation to to really jumpstart that, and to then look at our greatest resource, which is our young people, as investment, not as pawns or property, but as investments. And then the last thing is that governments, of whatever nation, has to, again, as we're talking priority, must seek, to stimulate, the demand for digital or technology solutions. It cannot be when there is an emergency or a need for something crashing, then I go ahead and become proactive. Well, I need to, I can't be, I guess, technology is such that it places a demand on us not to just be reactive, and waiting for, well, like with the pandemic thing, well, we know that we need to put in a greater infrastructure for those that are working from home, but it's not really important now. Oh, well, you know what? Everything's shutting down. Now it's important, and so to stimulate and keep that demand, as far as the technology solutions, and keep that as a priority, and building upon that, we continue to build upon that. And so those are the things, for me, that, and again, it's just not limited to those, but, it has to be, as far as education, all the policy, all the things that, that goes into the government's involvement, that priority, it has to be enhanced. It has to, and so that is the, I can't emphasize that enough. And again, because if you're not moving forward, then either you're stagnant or you're moving, in reverse, and you may not be moving in reverse, but everyone else is moving, progressing, and then you're getting left behind. So, that is just so critical, absolutely critical.
Yeah. Wow. Wonderful information. I got one question here for you. It's interesting because it says many senior citizens are not tech savvy. So what's a free resource to help seniors acclimate to technology now? I would assume that the question focuses on environment, like, let's say, for example, here in America, because Africa, our seniors, first of all, they got to be educated first, before, don't get me wrong, we do have people that, educated, but if we're talking about seniors technology, so but pretty much that's the question, concerning seniors and technology and resources. So
yeah, well, you know what, my approach to that is that you're never too old to learn. If there's a need to, and now what you do is you approach it in bite-sized pieces where it's palatable, and where you, how can I put it? Where that apprehension, that fear factor, you just kind of carve away at that, and before you know it, for example, I'll use the example with my own mom. Okay, my mother is going to be 89 in November, and so I remember her saying, and this was just a few years ago, that she wanted me to get her a laptop. I'm going, say that again. And so what I did is, I never assume anything, and because I do a lot of training as well, what I do is start with the basics. Okay, this is a mouse. Okay, this is, and so as you, just proceed, before you know it, there is a comfort level there. And then, you're not, it's not in a condescending way, and you're empowering them, to learn. And then before you know it, whether it's a few weeks, couple of months, you can look back, over your shoulder and say, wow, you know what, look how far I've come. And they really didn't realize that. Now, that could be, as far as training, I mean, you have, I mean, I've done it, you know, whether it be at community centers or uh, local colleges, you know, I mean, just where it's beginner, you know, type classes, and then you've got the intermediate and then the, you know, advanced and all of that. There are ways of doing it for those that want to enhance themselves. And because again, whether it's your cell phone, tablet, laptop, or whatever the case may be, even going to, I just went, you know, the other day to a service station, and it took me a while because the pump, it was like a computer, you know. I mean, it wasn't the usual, you know, you lift up this and then you punch in, you know. It was literally, I had to kind of acclimate myself for a second and going, oh, okay. And so once you get past that learning curve, and that it's going to be a learning curve, no matter who you are, no matter how old or how young. And it's up to the instructor or the teacher in whatever setting, you know, to facilitate that. But it can be done. Is my point. It can be done. Now there are those that just, you know, the whole technology thing just intimidates them. But I find that a challenge, you know, to say, you know what, if it's something that you're interested in, okay, we're going to navigate through this together, and it's up to me, you know. And so if it means just one small bite in a given month, then that's what we'll do. If you can handle 2 or 3 bites, you know, then so be it. But at some point, sooner or later, we're going to consume what's sitting there before us. And the age difference really, I've not found it to be a major hindrance for those that really want to embrace, you know, that particular technology.
Well, it's amazing. You know, just one phrase comes to mind as I listen to everything you've said, that it is an investment worth spending.
Mm-hmm.
Is an investment worth spending. You know, and you mentioned the fear factor. I think, you know, that's one of the contributing factor that we have in Africa, you know, because if you talk about introducing this infrastructure, you know, you're talking about training and development, you know, so people have been used to, you know, doing things, you know, a particular way. Now you got to retrain it into this whole new tech, and not just one area, but all facet of government and, you know, the
Yep.
private sector. And so they talk about building that cooperation between the private sector and governmental sector, you know, and integrating the school system. So it's a daunting task. We understand that. But I like what you said, start from somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
you know, start introducing this thing, start from somewhere, bits and pieces here and there, you know. You know, employees were learning.
Yep.
Employees were learning. I mean, you know, you go to you train, you start from somewhere. You have to spend money. Don't get me wrong. I understand
Yeah.
that. But if you're talking about the future,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned it earlier about being relevant, you kept saying that word relevant, because
Mm-hmm.
the world is becoming more complex and the world is moving ahead.
Yep.
And technology making it easier to do business.
Yep.
I mean, it's far easier. You mentioned just with a cell phone, you have everything. I mean, every company, every business you want to connect with right in your phone, you just got to type it in Google. You can have
Mm-hmm.
access. You have access, you know. And even the banking system, transfers of money, all those things, you know.
Yep.
So, I mean, all those things are right there, you know. So it will be a bit of a challenge for poor countries, you know. But as you said, it's an investment worth spending because of the benefit that it brings, the
Yep.
long-term benefit for the future.
Yes. Well, you know, I'll let me just interject this, that my in 2019 when I went to Uganda, it's a rural area, um, and so the eagerness to learn not only from the pastors from the, you know, spiritual pastors conference, but also, you know, life lessons, life skills, right? And so there was an eagerness there. There was certainly the intellect, you know, The only drawback was just that in some cases the resources are minimum. Okay, but the everything else, all things being equal, and so what we're doing, one of the things that we're, for example, whether it's and we're talking technology across the board, where we're doing Zoom training, and something as that we take for granted. Most of us in our houses have, I don't know how many TVs, okay, and so but you will see them gather around whatever size TV, and so just something as important as a larger TV where more people can gather.
Yes.
Training regarding the Zoom, the app, and all of that, all the various functionality there. And so that's one of the things that I'll be doing. I'm actually going to be returning to Uganda this September. And so even though it'll be on a pastors conference type level, but there's also going to be more of a life skills and continue to build upon the relationships and rapport that we've had, and to do it again, to emphasize, to utilize my background from the technology, where God has allowed me to really merge both. It's a dual track type thing, the ministry as well as technology. And I didn't think, to be honest with you, when I launched into the field, that, oh, wow, what is this? Where is this going to take me? How is this going to be relevant, if you will, for me? But now I see, now I see, just and how I can pour back, into, with not only, beyond just giving someone a fish, if you will,
Right.
but teaching them, and equipping them. And so that is not just biblical skills or what have you, but also just life skills. And so, and then a part of that life skill, obviously, we're talking technology, and that kind of brings it all together. So.
Oh, wow. It's amazing how time goes so fast. But, this brings us to the end of a segment with you, Pastor Greg. We want to really, 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 really thank you so much just for revealing yourself and just helping us to understand that technology is the future. Amen. It is the future, and nations need to begin to pay heed to that clarion call. Yes. That investing in technology is too critical for the infrastructure, for the future, for the existence in general, and the impact it can has, economically, socially, and in all sectors, academically, for nations and their citizens. And so we just want to allow you to make any concluding thoughts, as we talk about, Africa and just her future. Any concluding thoughts concerning technology in the future?
Yeah, the resource, Africa as a continent is just beyond, something that I think any one person can process. Just as we, look at the natural resources, minerals or whatever it happens to be. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the greatest resource is, our kids, our young people, our adults of whatever age, in investing in them. And, and let's face it, we can get as advanced as we could ever hope to be. But the greatest, if you will, if I could use this phrase, the greatest computer is our God-given brain, is our mind. And there's nothing that will ever usurp or surpass that. And so whether it's Africa, the US, or wherever, seeing that individual as an investment, not only kingdom-wise, but also as I mentioned a second ago, the life skills and all the other things that come into play. How can we not invest? How can we not do that? And seeing, and again, a lot of times it just boils down to perhaps limited resources, but everything else is there. The intellect, the will, the motivation, there's everything else is there. So it's up to those of us that have been blessed to bless others and to give. And so that's what I, pretty the biggest takeaway, for me. So.
Wow. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time. Thank you for your time. Thank you, all the listeners, those who tune in with us. Thank you so much. Again, this is the segment with Pastor Greg Morris on technology and the future of Africa. We want to leave you with the motto of our organization as we wrap up this evening: doing better by doing right. We believe Africa can do better.
Yes.
If she simply does right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks, Pastor Greg. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Bye.